I'd love to hear some of the things that you're up to these days. What are you up to now? What are some things you're excited about or looking forward to do?
Like these last few weeks, I've been doing these Rufus Wainwright Want One and Want Two orchestral concerts that are those records,
Hmm.
with an orchestra and Rufus and drums.
Wow.
So, that has involved like playing with, a lot of classical musicians and following a conductor,
Hmm.
this kind of thing, stuff that I don't really do.
Sure.
And of course, I tell the conductors that I am it would be almost like conduct if you can for me at times like you're conducting, like a 7 year old, or a group of 7 year olds.
Yeah.
That's been great. Those gigs have been cool. I do a lot of remote recording, so I've built my own
Mm.
studio that I'm in now. I framed it and insulated it and
Oh, cool.
sheetrocked it and ran the electrical and everything. So I have a very good room for recording. So I do a lot of remote recording off of SoundBetter's the primary site that I use. It's kind of like almost like Yelp for musicians, I
Sure,
guess.
sure, sure.
So I use SoundBetter. I have a profile on there, and I do a lot of remote recording, and I play some locally, and I record in the studios in Austin
Mm.
as well.
Briefly, I want to touch actually one of the talking points, and you reminded me of it is the studio that you built. I make a ton of music myself for my own music career. And I just started getting into tracking my own drums. I don't play drums like my bandmates drumming. So I would love just any tips you have on quality of getting the best drum quality for the recording. Any just general tips, what you like to use, microphone placements, whatever the case, mixing, whatever the case is. If you have any
Right.
drum
Yeah.
recording tips, would be actually super helpful to me because
Yeah. Oh,
I'm
good.
not
Yeah.
that great and I don't love it very much yet. So it's a lot of work.
Yeah. I would say it is difficult. Okay, it's difficult if unless you have really deep pockets to get the perfect drum room and hire everybody to hire the right people or buy into the right piece of real estate or whatever. That's very difficult. So one thing I would say is that you're going to want to have in a lot of like home recording, home studio, or homemade studios and that kind of thing. You're going to have a bit smaller dimensions, and
Sure.
you're not going to have a lot of choice
Mm.
about like the shape of the room. So a lot of times it's going to be squares and rectangles and stuff like that. So one thing I think is important about getting good drum sounds in the room is that having a lot of bass traps so that you're absorbing a lot of you're absorbing a lot of sound, particularly, well, I don't even say particularly, probably in all frequencies there's a lot of absorption going on, and figuring out how to do that. And then of course a lot of diffusion, like really complex scattering of the sound waves
Mm.
through basically, that would probably be mostly done through panels. I use wood, but with a lot of angles, very kind of complex angles. So those seem to really help, because a lot of times with home recording, it just, at least in the room mics and to some degree the overheads, it kind of sounds like somebody's garage or something.
Sure.
Your
Exactly.
your
Yeah.
studio has so much of the artifacts of
The room.
a very humble room. So I would say absorb a lot, and
Uh-huh.
then scatter the reflections a lot, and then of course for overheads and a lot of modern recording, like home recording settings, I think to have overheads that are cardioid,
Mm.
so that they're rejecting the back. So you're really not picking up your ceiling. You're picking up what's in front of the mic,
Sure,
or
sure, sure,
below the mic. The mic's
sure.
facing down. What I try to do is really dry up the ceiling a lot in the first place, and have a bass trap right behind the drum kit, and then have cardioid mics that are really a little bit more directional for your overheads.
Hmm.
And the rest is having some decent room mics. That can be tricky, the placement of room mics, but for a lot of modern recording you're going to need to have close mics. I think i think
Sure,
overall close mics are very, very useful, and you're going to
sure.
want to have really solid signals. I kind of use, as my archetype for most things that I do, is Steve Gadd. His drums were a little bit more dry, a little bit more muffled. He didn't tune particularly high, and I'd say he was maybe a medium. He might even been tuned a little on the low side, but there was always compactness and
Hmm.
adaptability to his sound. So,
Sure.
am I referencing Steve Gadd for the zenith moments, like holy shit, Mount Everest of genius moments, like in a drum clinic? No, I'm talking about like the working Steve Gadd, like
Exactly.
him working in a studio, like playing in playing in time so well that it kind of like opens up, I guess, a new suite of possibilities for how he could play because he was playing in time so well, and then playing dynamically so well
Hmm.
that it yet again opened up a lot of opportunities for how he could play because he was making such great dynamic decisions.
Sure.
And then also like the treatment of the drums was both like really robust and punchy, but also dry.
Yeah.
So he was very he sort of like he had created this kind of vehicle to where he could travel into all different kinds of musical idioms
Sure.
in a way that was so masterful. So like I think about Steve Gadd a lot, and so that's why a lot of times I tend to record drums a little more dry because I think people have a lot of agency in the later stages of production to kind of wet them up a little bit.
Fascinating, man. I really appreciate you sharing that, man. Thank you.
Sure, of course.
Now that you are where you are in the career, your career, what is something that you wish you knew when you first started out?
I think what I wish I knew was that I should, as a matter of principle, I should in some ways apply myself at really every reasonable opportunity rather than engage in doldrums or depression or doubt.
Mm,
That would have been a kind of a stoic message that it's not that I can't blame anyone for not having told me that because I think I did have positive examples of that and those examples did help. Nonetheless, I feel like I could have applied myself better and I could have, I recorded a song for a guy the other day whose lyric was something like, one of the lyrics was something like, imagine, what's possible if you live simply without any fear at all.
yeah.
Now, as a poetic kind of statement or whatever that is, obviously there's a reason we have fear. It keeps us from doing just incredibly dumb shit.
Yeah, exactly.
But I understand what he means.
Yeah.
As a creative person, like, well, wait a minute, what if you just like didn't? What if you weren't so protective and so engaged in maintaining this narrative of like,
Mm,
I need to protect myself because I'm hiding the fact that I'm no good, like imposter syndrome. So I feel like you just get it out get it out and be willing to be seen and be a little bit more generous with being seen as flawed and just get on about the business of reapplying yourself
yeah.
and just being really engaged in real time in the process, getting more experiences, getting better, and not getting stuck in anything that's depressive or negative or anything that's kind of like the doldrums.
Yeah.
I wish I would have known that a little bit more clearly when I was younger.
Yeah. That's some fascinating, that's some phenomenal advice. I think that a lot of people in a lot of different areas of life can really benefit from that. So thank you for that.
Absolutely, yeah.